I don't think people talk about this enough, but a lot of us feel behind in life. And what's weird is that it doesn't even matter what age you are. You could be 17 and you feel behind. You could be 21 and feel behind. You could be 30 and feel behind. You could be even successful and still feel behind. It's like this constant pressure that sits in the background of your mind. Like you're not doing enough. Like you're wasting your time. Like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck in place. And the worst part is, it doesn't always come from real failure. Sometimes, you're actually doing fine. You might be working, studying, saving money, but somehow you still feel like you're losing. Like you're late. Like life has already started, yet somehow you've missed the beginning. And I think that feeling is one of the most common emotional experiences of modern life. But it's also one of the hardest ones to explain. Because it doesn't sound serious. It sounds like you're just complaining. But it's not just complaining. It's a real psychological pressure. And it affects everything. Your motivation, your confidence, your relationship, your self-esteem. Even your ability to enjoy the present. So I want to talk about why so many people feel behind in life, even though we aren't. So let's start with the obvious question. Why does everyone feel like they're behind now? Because this feeling isn't just a personal issue. It's cultural, it's structural, and it's psychological. We live in a time where we're constantly exposed to other people's progress. We're exposed to people's achievements, people's relationships, people's money, people's lifestyle. And because of that, it's harder than ever to feel like you're on track, even if you are. So basically, my main argument is, if you feel behind in life, it's because of modern culture constantly measuring your worth against others. And the result is, no matter what you do, it never feels like it's enough. I think the first thing people need to understand is that feeling behind isn't always about reality. It's about reference points. Like, imagine you're running a race. If you don't know where the other runners are, you might feel fine. But the moment you see someone ahead of you, you suddenly feel like you're losing. Even if you're running at a good pace. That's basically how modern life works. You're not comparing your life to what's realistic. You're comparing your life to the most visible version of everyone else's life. The loudest people, the most confident people, the most successful people. And when you use those people as your reference point, your life starts to feel small. Even if it's normal or healthy. So the problem isn't that your life is falling apart. The problem is that your brain is using the wrong measuring tools. This is an obvious one, but it's worth saying. Social media has changed everything. Because in the past, you compared yourself to people around you. Your classmates, your neighbors, your co-workers, and your friends. And that was already stressful. But now you compare yourself to everyone. And not just everyone, the best version of everyone. Because social media is basically a highlight reel. People post their promotions, their glow-ups, their relationships, holidays, gym progress, and achievements. And you scroll through like it's normal. You scroll through someone else's life like it's entertainment. But your brain doesn't treat it like entertainment. Your brain treats it like evidence. Like proof that everyone else is moving forward faster than you are. And the scariest part is that you can just absorb comparisons without even realizing it. You don't need to consciously think, I'm jealous. You just start feeling slightly worse, slightly more anxious, slightly more restless. And then later you wonder why you can't relax. That's why. Because you've been watching everyone else's progress all day, so your brain feels like you're falling behind, even if you're not. Another huge reason why people feel behind is because modern culture is obsessed with productivity. Everything is about optimizing. Optimizing your sleep, diet, money, career, habits, and discipline. And again, self-improvement isn't bad inherently. But when self-improvement becomes a culture, it becomes toxic. Because what it does is it teaches people that resting is laziness, and that relaxing is wasting time, and that doing nothing is falling behind. So now, even when you take a break, you don't enjoy it. You feel guilty, you feel like you should be doing more, you feel like you're wasting your potential. And that guilt is a major reason why people feel behind. and they can't even recharge without feeling like they're falling behind. And what's ironic is that rest is necessary for progress, but modern culture doesn't treat rest as necessary. It treats it as weakness. So people end up pushing themselves too hard. They burn out, they lose motivation, and then they feel even more behind. It's like a loop of pressure, exhaustion, and self-hate. I think one of the most toxic things about comparison is that you're comparing different moments. You're comparing your low points to someone else's high points. Like maybe you're in a phase where you feel lost. You don't know what you want, you're stressed, you're tired. You're trying to figure life out. And then you go online and see someone posting their graduation photo, their new job, new apartment, relationships. And it makes you feel like you're failing. But what you don't see is the months they struggled, the anxiety, insecurities, loneliness, pressure, and breakdowns. You don't see the moments where they felt behind too. You're seeing the polished outcome, not the messy process. And when you compare your messy process to someone else's polished outcome, you'll always feel behind, because nobody posts their confusion. They post their results. So your brain starts to think that everyone has their life figured out, and you're the only one that's lost. But that's not the reality. That's just the internet. This is the part people don't talk about enough. Feeling behind isn't just psychological, but it's also economic. Because the world genuinely got harder. Housing is more expensive, rent is expensive, groceries are expensive, and everything costs more. And you didn't need me to tell you that. And because of that, a lot of people feel like adulthood is delayed. Like you're working, but you're not building anything. Like you're putting in effort, but not getting stability. And that creates a very specific kind of hopelessness. Because in the past, progress was visible. You got a job, you could afford things. You could move out, you could build a life. Now, you can work full time and still feel broke, so people feel like they're stuck in a loop of survival. And when you're in survival mode, you feel behind, because survival doesn't feel like progress. It feels like stagnation. It feels like you're trapped. And that's why I think so many young people, like myself, feel lost right now. Because they're not just fighting their own insecurities, they're fighting a world that makes stability harder than it used to be. So it's not all in your head. Some of it is reality. One of the biggest reasons people feel behind is because they believe life is a timeline. They believe there's a schedule. By 18, you should know what you want. 21, you should have your life started. 25, you should be settled. 30, you should have everything figured out. And if you don't hit these milestones, you feel like you're late. But that timeline is basically fake. It's cultural conditioning. It comes from movies, parents, society, school, and social media. But life doesn't actually work that way. People develop at different speeds. People have different circumstances, different struggles, different starting points, different opportunities. Some people get lucky. Some people find their path late. And some people look successful, but they collapse later. So, when you compare yourself to an imaginary timeline, you'll always feel like you're failing. Because no one is perfectly on schedule. Even the people who look like they are, they're just better at hiding their chaos. Another reason people feel behind is relationships. Because modern culture treats relationships like achievements. Like if you're single, something must be wrong. And when you see your friends getting into relationships, getting engaged, moving in together, you start questioning yourself. You start thinking, am I falling behind socially? Am I behind emotionally? Am I not lovable? And what makes it worse is that relationship content is everywhere. Couple TikToks, couple YouTubers, couple Instagrams. It's constant. And when you don't want a relationship, seeing it repeatedly affects you, because it makes it seem like everyone else is progressing while you're stuck. But relationships aren't necessarily progress, they're just one path of many. And sometimes people are in relationships that are destroying them, but they stay because it looks like progress. So you might envy someone's relationship without realizing what's actually going on behind closed doors. But your brain doesn't care. It sees relationship as a milestone, so it creates pressure. And that pressure, of course, makes you feel behind. I think underneath the pressure of being behind is fear. Fear that you're wasting your youth, fear that you're wasting your potential, fear that time is moving faster than you can keep up with. And I think this is why the feeling hits harder at night, when you're alone with your thoughts, when you're not distracted. Because deep down, feeling behind isn't about comparing your life to others. It's about comparing your life to who you thought you'd be by now. You had a vision of yourself, a dream version, a future version. And if you're not there yet, you feel like you failed. Even if you're still young, even if you're still learning, even if you're still building. And it's painful, because it feels like you're disappointing your past self. But the truth is, your past self didn't know what life would be like. Your past self didn't know how hard adulthood would be, how exhausting work could be, how expensive everything is. So you can't judge yourself based on a fantasy timeline, because that timeline was built by someone who didn't even know the reality yet. Now, this is the part that I think changes the whole perspective. Behind compared to what? Behind compared to who? Because when you zoom out, you realize something. Most people are lost. Most people are improvising. Most people don't feel fully stable themselves. They just don't say it out loud. So the feeling of being behind is often an illusion created by silence. People don't openly talk about their confusion. They don't talk about their anxiety. They don't talk about how unsure they are. They post the moments that look successful, so everyone ends up thinking that everyone else is ahead, and nobody realizes that we're all struggling. It's like everyone is drowning quietly, and then everyone feels embarrassed that they can't swim. But everyone is drowning. Then nobody is actually behind. They're just human. And I think modern life makes people forget that being lost is normal. It makes people think that they should have clarity at all times, but clarity isn't constant. Clarity comes in phases. So how do I stop actually feeling behind? Because it's not enough just to say comparison is bad. That's obvious. But the real solution is deeper. I think the first step is defining your own version of progress. Not society's version, not your parents' version, not social media's version. Your version. Because progress for one person might be to get a degree, for another it might be to get a job. Others it might be get a license or work on themselves. And if you don't define your own progress, you'll always chase someone else's, and that's exhausting. The second step is building small routines, because routine creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence, and confidence reduces the feeling of being behind. When you're doing something every day that improves your life, even slightly, your brain starts to feel like you're moving forward again. And the third step is limiting exposure to comparison. And I know that sounds like delete social media, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. It can be as simple as stop doom scrolling at night, stop following people who trigger your insecurities, stop consuming content that makes you feel like you're not enough, because what you feed your brain becomes your reality. But personally, I believe that everyone should stop treating life like something you're supposed to win. Because the feeling of being behind comes from competition. It comes from ranking, from status, from achievement. But life isn't a leaderboard. It's an experience. And the more you treat life like a competition, the more you'll suffer. Because there will always be someone ahead of you. Someone richer, someone more attractive, more successful, talented, and social. So if you measure your worth through comparison, you will never feel satisfied and you'll always feel like you're behind. But if you measure your worth through growth, through peace and purpose, you'll start to feel stable, because growth is internal and nobody can take that from you. So if I were to summarize everything, you feel behind in life because modern culture is designed to make you feel behind. It constantly shows you other people's progress. It constantly pressures you to optimize. It constantly tells you your worth is tied to productivity and achievement. And it makes you believe there's a timeline and you're failing to follow it. But the truth is, most people aren't ahead. They're just loud. Most people don't have life figured out. They're just posting the moments that look like they do. And the biggest trap is thinking that your life needs to look impressive to be meaningful. It doesn't. Sometimes progress is invisible. Sometimes progress is surviving. Sometimes progress is healing. Sometimes it's just not giving up. So if you feel behind, it doesn't have to mean you're failing. It means you're human. Thanks for watching.